All right, we're going to begin with the U.S. men's national team. On Saturday, they kicked off their 2025 slate with a 3-1 friendly win over Venezuela in Fort Lauderdale. The goals courtesy of McGlynn, Agyemang, and Miljevic. Doug, you were there covering this match. We know January friendlies are mostly about individual performances and players staking their claim to a role with the full team. So what did you make of it? Overall thoughts on the game?
I thought it was a good game. I mean, January camp games are normally terrible. And the U.S. Lost the last two January games that it was in 2023 and 2024. So my expectations were not very high, but it was a good game right from the start. We got a penalty in the first couple of minutes that Miljevic missed. And then, but then we got a couple goals in the first half and a couple more in the second. So really entertaining game and quite a bit to talk about coming out of what, usually there's not much to talk about coming out of these games, but I actually thought a few players did pretty well and can be intriguing options potentially going forward.
Let's go from back to front. Patrick Schulte got the nod in goal. A lot of people are hoping to see Matt Friis during this window. The U.S. plays Costa Rica on Wednesday in Orlando. I'm going to phrase it like this. If I told you that Matt Turner wasn't going to be the U.S.'s starting goalkeeper in 2026, who would you bet on emerging? Who do you think is most poised over the next 18 months to become that best other option?
I mean, based on what we know right now, and obviously things can change really quickly. We're 17 months out from the World Cup. That's an eternity in this sport. But for my money, Patrick Schulte is now firmly entrenched as the number 2 behind Matt Turner. Matt Turner, as we know, not playing very much for Crystal Palace, and that's Patrick Schulte's big advantage. He's going to be playing every single week in MLS for Columbus. And, we've seen in the past, there's a little bit of a precedent there when we look at the last cycle where Zach Steffen was the guy that was in England and was a number 2 and wasn't playing regularly. And he got hurt or there was, I think he got COVID at the time during qualifying. And Matt Turner, who was in MLS then, stepped in and never really relinquished that job and won it and was the keeper at the World Cup. So the same thing could happen. I think there's some trust in Schulte. Zach Steffen is also in this camp. We know he has a ton of experience. So the fact that Coach Mauricio Pochettino went with Schulte, I think says pretty clearly that he's the guy behind Matt Turner. Remember, Ethan Horvath, who was the understudy for Turner during the Copa America over the summer. He came in that fateful loss to Panama in Atlanta in the group stage after Matt Turner was hurt. He wasn't called in for the final camp of 2024. He's hardly playing for Cardiff City. I know he got a FA Cup game a couple weekends ago, but for me, Patrick Schulte's the number 2. And again, a lot can happen between now and June of 2026. He's poised to potentially give Turner a run for that number 1 job.
At center back, I keep saying somebody new has to emerge. I was disappointed that Jalen Neal dropped out of the squad. I know there's this 18-year-old kid, Banks, at Augsburg that everybody's excited about now. But George Campbell got the start on Saturday. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he did very well, Mosse. I didn't think the U.S. defense, including Schulte, were tested very much. But it was telling that Pochettino had the faith to put George Campbell in there. This is a guy that had never played an international game. You have Tim Ream and Walker Zimmerman, the main partnership at the last World Cup. Both those guys were on the bench, so it's pretty clear that Campbell showed well in training. He's teammates with Jalen Neal for CF Montreal, so that's good for me. I get to see those guys up close this season, but he did well, and I think he's a guy that, I don't know if he starts the second game, but he certainly didn't hurt himself in the match against Venezuela. And again, the fact that he was in there says that he has something that Pochettino likes.
In the midfield, Jack McGlynn scored a beautiful goal. And, it's interesting. All the other central midfielders in the pool tend to be high energy, high motor guys, or Adams, McKinney, Musa, Johnny, etc. McGlynn is something different. He's kind of that old school, elegant playmaker. Do you think he could carve out a role with the full senior team because he does bring something different to the table?
Like you said, it is a little bit of a numbers game. There's a lot of players there. I don't think you even mentioned Aiden Morris and Gianluca Buzio. There's Tanner Tessman. So it's pretty crowded in central midfielder. But, I mean, talk about a guy that didn't hurt himself. Not only did he score a absolutely world-class goal He also had an assist in the match. He wanted to take the penalty that was given early, so that shows some confidence. He's a confident kid, and he's got such a sweet left foot. And we know that someone that has that quality is important. So he does have a little bit of a different look. Again, after the game, Pochettino was asked if he said all along that MLS players are going to get a fair shake, they're going to get a fair shot. And he was asked if he felt more strongly about that after the performance. And he did kind of pump the brakes a little bit and say, look, we have to respect the guys that are in Europe, the guys that are playing at the top level and that have been in the first couple camps, including the competitive games in the Nations League against Jamaica in November. But, things happen again. There's injuries. There's always opportunity. You can only do what you can with the opportunity in front of you. And there's no question that Jack McGlynn was the big winner or one of the big winners from the match on Saturday.
Miljevic, whose name I've been butchering on this pod, by the way, so thank you to Luke Weilman for correcting me on Saturday. He was an interesting call-up, currently unattached, most recently played for Newell's Old Boys, which is the club where Mauricio Pochettino began his playing career. He gets the start. He takes the penalty early and misses. Was having a rough game, frankly, until he scored a lovely goal in the second half. But there was a lot of vitriol directed towards him on social media from Herculez Gomez, Tom Bogert, and others. There's this feeling that national team caps should be earned, and he didn't really earn this call-up, that this was an indulgence by Mauricio Pochettino. Did you have an issue with it?
I didn't have an issue with it. I always like when there's, one or two guys that are outside of MLS that we don't know that well. I think it helped Miljevic that he's Argentinian. He does have Argentine citizenship, born in the States, but grew up down there. That certainly didn't hurt him. Didn't hurt that he played for Newell's. Didn't hurt that he scored a goal with Pochettino in the stands for Newell's in November. And, I get the argument that this is not a guy that covered himself in glory when he played in MLS. He wasn't able to start for Montreal, and we all know, or I think most of us know what happened after that. We can talk about it. He decided to sign up for a men's league to get some extra playing time, ended up getting into a fist fight, was banned from the league forever. This is a guy that's like a black belt in Taekwondo. So, he's got an edge to him. I can tell you that some people looked at that as a red flag, a guy you don't want to bring in. This is something Mauricio Pochettino actually likes about this player. One of the main criticisms, certainly of the first team, is that they don't have many hard men. They've been called soft. I wouldn't go that far, but that's been the criticism of the first team. And this kid is anything but that. And he has that fight. He has that fighting spirit that Mauricio Pochettino is trying to instill in this group. And I think that that's a big part of the reason why he's here. And yeah, I agree with you. He didn't have a very good first half. He did show the confidence to want to take the penalty, did miss it, but he was much better in the second, and to his credit, took his goal quite well. So I don't know what that means for Wednesday or beyond that. But the idea that he shouldn't have been in because of the disciplinary problems or because he's a guy that is a bit hot-headed, I think it's actually the opposite. I think that that's a big part of the reason Pochettino wanted to bring him in and have him sort of have players like that sort of develop this culture that he wants to create within the larger squad.
Yeah, Bill Simmons years ago coined the term irrational confidence guys in talking about NBA players. Miljevic strikes me as an irrational confidence guy. You could put him on a field with Messi, Ronaldo, and Mbappe, and if there's a penalty, he would still grab the ball and want to take it, which is kind of funny. But he took it very poorly, which was disappointing. Now, you mentioned Wednesday's game against Costa Rica, who are now managed by Miguel Herrera. That will take place in Orlando. Who are some players who maybe didn't start this match, who you'd like to see start that game so you can get a better look at them?
Yeah, so before the Venezuela game, Pochettino said that he wanted to see everybody this camp. There's only 20 players remaining. The squad started at 24. Neil left camp. John Tolkien obviously was signed in the Bundesliga, so he left. There's a couple other players as well that had some injuries. So I don't know that he's including the goalkeepers in that. I don't know if he's going to split time between Stefan and Fries in this game. I really don't know what he's going to do there. But I think as far as the field players go, yeah, you're going to see everyone that didn't play or came in as a substitute get some more minutes in this game. I have to think that Walker Zimmerman and Tim Ream start this one. I'd like to see a lot more of Diego Luna. He came in the second half. I was slightly surprised he didn't start. I thought he did fine in the second half when he came in. He brings something. You talk about a guy that brings something different. I think Luna's that guy. He's got that creative spark. He has an edge to his game as well. So I'd love to see him from the start against the Ticos in Orlando.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.